Now let's take a look at the accelerate toward behavior. We just, in a previous video, looked at accelerate, and we were able to use a dial to change the direction in which our actor was accelerating in. But now we want to look at the accelerate toward. So again, we'll just click the plus sign in the inspector to create a brand new actor. And you notice that I double-clicked on the actor to drag the accelerate behavior into the actor, but you can also just drag these behaviors directly onto the actors themselves. I don't always recommend that because you might get confused as to where you actually dropped it, so I like to double click on the actor, kind of open up its brains, as I like to call it, and then start dragging in all these behaviors so we can see what's going on exactly. But I did want you to know, just for speed, you can drag it on top of the actor itself. So again, we're inside actor 1, and as we saw before in the last video, if I just drag it in here, this was the accelerate command or behavior. And we had a direction and an acceleration, and that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to delete that. And now we're talking about accelerate towards. So instead of that little dial, we now have some coordinates that we can plug in. And before I start plugging in coordinates, let's try to understand what those coordinates really are. So let's jump back to our scene real quick. So I'll click the back button. And you can see that in this scene I have it set up as an iPad. We can set this up as an iPhone, we can set this up as a Kindle, we can pretty much set up this workspace or this stage to any size that we want. Maybe if we want to output to the PC or output to the Mac. So depending on how you've set this up in your initial setup, so if I go back to home and we go to project info, see where it says platform, iPad, and all these different ones that you have here, and depending on whether you're using a PC or a Mac, these might be slightly different. But right now I'm using iPad landscape. So I just happen to know that an iPad is about 1024 pixels by 768 pixels. And if you're not familiar with that, you might want to learn a little bit more about Photoshop and pixels and working with those areas. But don't worry if you don't know that stuff right now. Let's just understand how these coordinates work. So we'll go back to the initial scene. We'll look at this iPad that I've set up here. So again, as I mentioned, the iPad, or at least in this case, is about 1024 pixels across and 768 pixels in height. So pixels are just those little kind of dots in your screen if you're not more familiar with programs like Photoshop. So right here at the very, very bottom, the bottom left, that would be 0, 0. And if I go all the way up here to the top, that would be 1024 by 768. So this is kind of how all these coordinates work. So if I were to start here at 0, 0, and I would just go up 1 pixel, that would be 1 and 0. If I were to go up 1 and over 1, that would be 1 and 1, and then so on and so forth, so on and so forth. It's kind of like a graph, as you can imagine. So let's drag this actor here inside our scene, and we'll double click on the actor, and we want to choose where he wants to go. So let's just try typing in 1024 and 768. And again, as I mentioned, if you have no idea what a pixel is or you've never worked with Photoshop, don't freak out. With a little bit of experimentation and just changing and adding in some numbers here, it'll really help you understand things. But you know, it's good to know that the bottom left is 0, 0. That way you can kind of have a starting point. We're going to keep things relative to the scene and not the actor. That can get confusing with the actor. As I just pointed out, I showed you where 0, 0 was in the scene. So if we're going to accelerate to this position of 1024 in the x-axis, right to left, and 768 in the y-axis, top to bottom, and we'll do it at 100, this is what happens. So he's exactly accelerating towards that top area. So if I go back, and again I say 0 and then 0, then if you think in your mind, where was 0, 0? It was at the bottom left. So let's click play or preview, and you can see now we're moving to that center point, 0, 0. So that's all really, really, really useful. But I'm going to show you a very powerful trick in case, again, you don't know anything about pixels or you don't really understand how many pixels are in an iPad or how many pixels are in a Kindle or how many pixels are in an iPhone or an Android device. Because, man, who knows all that stuff unless you're building video games all day. But there's a really simple trick to figure that out. All you have to do is take an actor and drop it anywhere inside your scene here. And if you double click on the actor, you can see over here in the attributes, if we open up position, you can see exactly where that actor is. So it's at exactly 183 by 615, and some smaller decimals after that, but we'll just stick with 183 and 615. So if you remember x and y is 183 and 615, then that means I can type in 183 and 615 here. We'll keep the acceleration to 100, and we can move our actor anywhere we want, and he's going to move back to that point that we set, which was that 183 by, I forget the number already, 615 I think. So we'll hit play, and you can see that your actor is moving exactly to that position. So if you ever get confused and you're trying to figure out, well, where is this location and where is that location, and I want my actor to move to that location, you can pretty much create any actor. Maybe you don't want to move some of your main actors in your scene. Place it where you want. So what if I put this right here in the center and I want everything to come to the center? All I'd have to do is double click on that actor, look in the attributes, open up the position, and I can see that that position is now 511 by 383. So a really great way of figuring out where everything is. And over here at the top, middle, again, if I open this up, this is 472 by 738. So instead of having to just guess all day long, all you have to do is kind of place a marker, an actor down like this, double click on it, and then you can find that information and then plug that information into this actor as well.